They say when you're in a coma, you can still hear things. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, then I heard the sound of my life being stolen, one transaction at a time. My name is Carter Maddox. I'm 41 years old, and until recently I was the senior financial analyst at Halston and Crane, a boutique investment firm in Seattle that specialized in high net worth portfolios. I'd spent 12 years building a reputation for being stable, smart, and surgical with numbers. I had a plan for everything, contingencies for every outcome, except this one. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was how quiet the hospital room was. Machines hummed, soft beeps tracked the rhythm of my heart, but there were no flowers, no get-well cards, no warmth. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of the sterile ceiling tiles above me. A nurse entered, startled to see me conscious, and rushed to get the doctor. The accident happened 9 days earlier, head-on collision. I was lucky to be alive. Skull fracture, 2 broken ribs, internal bleeding. They had to induce a coma to stabilize me. And yet, somehow, I felt like I'd woken up into a dream someone else had started writing without me. When I asked about my wife, Morgan, the staff got strangely polite. One nurse said she'd been around but didn't elaborate. Another mentioned she'd handled the discharge paperwork early. A third one said nothing at all, just gave me a sad smile as she changed my IV bag. The next morning, I was cleared to leave. No one came to pick me up, no suitcase, no coat. A nurse handed me a manila envelope with my belongings: watch, wallet, phone. I checked the phone. No messages, just a rideshare app confirmation that someone else had scheduled my pickup. Morgan. The driver barely made eye contact. I gave him my address. When we pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the new welcome mat. Different design. The second thing, my key didn't fit. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the doorknob like it might change its mind. I knocked. Nothing. Curtains drawn, lights off. I circled around the back, checked the sliding glass door. Locked. Same with the garage. Then I remembered the old spare key I'd buried under the garden stone near the hydrangeas back when we first moved in. It was still there, muddy, cold, but there. When I stepped inside, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a showroom. The furniture was the same, but the photos were gone. No frame wedding pictures, no candid beach shots from Cabo. The mantle was bare. Her books, gone. Her shoes, gone. Her scent, gone. Like she'd been erased or never existed at all. The master bedroom sealed it. Her side of the closet was empty. Her jewelry drawer left open, lined with impressions of things that had once been there. The bed was made with military precision. Too neat, too staged. I sat down and pulled out my phone. I dialed her number. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I opened my banking app. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe a charge for moving services or a few hundred missing from our emergency fund. But not this. Joint checking, $17.43. Savings, $0. IRA, emptied. Emergency fund, gone. Mortgage, prepaid, by half, my half. I stared at the screen for a full minute, willing the numbers to change. They didn't. She drained everything. Not just moved out, moved on, cashed out. Like I was a stock she'd decided to sell while the market was high. My phone buzzed. One new message, no name, just a number I knew by heart. This is me getting back what I'm owed. That was it. No explanation, no apology, not even punctuation. I read it 3 times. Then I leaned back, staring up at the ceiling, and let out the kind of breath that feels like the last one before something breaks inside you. I didn't yell, didn't throw the phone, didn't cry. I just typed one word in reply. Understood. Because in that moment, I did. Not all of it, not yet. But enough to know that whatever I thought my life was, it wasn't anymore. She didn't just leave me. She'd planned this. While I was hooked up to machines, with tubes down my throat and stitches in my skull, she'd been busy cashing me out like a severance check. It wasn't the money, it was the message. She waited for me to go silent before she took everything. She thought I wouldn't wake up, that I'd never know. But I did wake up. And now I was wide awake. The apartment smelled like old paint and microwave dinners. It was the kind of place you rent when you don't plan on staying long. Plastic blinds, walls thin enough to hear the guy next door coughing in his sleep, and a mattress still in its plastic wrap. But it was mine, or at least it was mine enough. I didn't tell anyone where I was. No calls to friends, no updates to family. I didn't want the sympathy. I wanted quiet. I needed to think. I needed to dig. The first night, I sat on the floor with my laptop and started going through every financial record I could access. I pulled the last 12 months of bank statements. Our joint account had a pattern: regular deposits from my salary, groceries, utilities, occasional dinners. Then, in the months leading up to the wreck, I saw something else. Large transfers into an account I didn't recognize. Morgan's name was attached, but not mine. I blinked at the amounts: 3,000 here, 5,000 there, sometimes masked as investments, sometimes labeled emergency reallocations. I never approved them. I never even saw them. Then came the documents, digital paperwork tied to our house. I'd always kept backups of everything, just in case. I opened a PDF titled Quitclaim Deed, and there it was. My name signed neatly on the bottom. The signature looked familiar. It was familiar, because it was copied. An older version, scanned from a different form I'd signed years ago. She'd forged it. I stared at the signature for a long time, feeling something cold press down on my chest. She'd removed me from the deed months ago. The house, our house, was in her name alone now. The account she emptied, the equity she moved, the insurance payouts. None of it was an accident. This wasn't panic. This was precision. I needed more, not just receipts. I needed proof. I needed someone who knew how to track shadows. That's when I found him, Milo Grant. Private investigator, former fraud analyst, retired military. Quiet guy with tired eyes and a handshake that said he'd seen worse. His office was in a strip mall between a pawn shop and a vape store. Nothing fancy, just files, coffee, and silence. I showed him what I had: the forged signature, the account transfers. He didn't say much, just nodded and asked me one question. Do you want everything, or just enough to win? I didn't answer right away. Eventually I said, everything. It took 2 weeks. During that time, I lived like a ghost. Wake up, freeze-dried coffee, track more paperwork, sleep, repeat. I replayed every conversation Morgan and I had in the months before the wreck. Her moods, her silences. That business trip she took to Portland that went mysteriously long. The way she always turned her phone over when it lit up. One night, a flashback hit me out of nowhere. We were at dinner, her birthday. I gave her a necklace. She smiled and kissed me, but there was a strange tightness in her eyes, like she was thinking about something else. I remember asking her if everything was okay. She said she was just tired. I believed her. I was always believing her. Milo called me in for the results on a Tuesday. He didn't sugarcoat it. She's living with someone else, he said. She moved in with him 10 days before the accident. His name's Chase. Divorced. Real estate agent. They've been seeing each other for at least 7 months. I didn't flinch, just nodded. There's more, he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were screenshots of her texts, flights, hotel check-ins. One particularly brutal email where she outlined to her lover how she'd restructure the assets once she got clearance. Clearance, in this case, was my COMA. She'd signed off as my medical proxy, something we'd agreed on years ago when drawing up wills. She authorized minimal intervention, told the hospital not to perform certain procedures due to cost risk. She told one doctor in writing, if he makes it, great. If not, I'm ready. She was planning my death like it was a meeting to be scheduled. I looked at Milo and said nothing for a full minute. Then I stood, buttoned my jacket, and said, if she wanted to cash out, she should have checked the fine print. Because I wasn't dead. I wasn't even done. I was just getting started. The lawyer's office was tucked inside a brownstone just off East Alder Street. No gold plaque, no receptionist with a fake smile. Just a buzzer, a camera, and a name on the frosted glass. R. Silvers, Esquire. He came highly recommended by Milo. Said he was the kind of guy who didn't just understand fraud, he hunted it. Silvers was in his 50s, bald, wiry, with the kind of stare that made you feel like you were already under oath. He didn't offer condolences, just motioned for me to sit, then said, tell me what she took. Everything, I replied. I laid it all out. Bank records, forged documents, quitclaim deed, text screenshots. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't need to. The evidence was cold, clear, and loaded. He asked sharp questions, pausing only to scribble into a yellow legal pad. When I mentioned she'd limited medical care while I was unconscious, he blinked once, slowly. "Do you have that in writing?" "I'm working on it." "Work faster," he said. "You're not just a victim of theft. This could border on attempted manslaughter, depending on what we find." He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling like it had answers. Then he added, almost to himself, "She didn't just rob you. She tried to erase you." The words hit harder than I expected, because they were true. That night, I drove to my storage unit and dug out an old phone I hadn't used in years. Morgan used to call it my backup brain, a cracked Galaxy I kept as a digital junk drawer, old logins, photos, screenshots, and, hopefully, messages. It still powered on. The screen flickered like it was waking from its own coma. I connected it to a recovery app and began sorting through deleted texts. It took hours, but then, buried in the archives, I found what I didn't know I was looking for, her messages to Chase, hundreds of them, some romantic, some cruel, some surgical. One read, "Once the insurance clears, I'll start the transfer. He won't know the difference." Another, "They say he's stable. I'm just hoping for a clean exit. Either way, I'll make it look legal." But the worst was a joke she made on his birthday. "Next time you blow out candles, wish for fingerprints that don't trace." Chase replied with a laughing emoji and a gun gif. I stared at that exchange until the battery died in my hands. The next day, I went back to Silver's with the phone. He didn't say anything for a long time after skimming the messages. Then he set the device down gently and said, "She was planning your funeral before the doctors had a chance." We started building the case: fraud, theft, medical neglect, spousal abandonment, false representation. Silver's filed an emergency petition to freeze any remaining assets in her name. I signed the documents without hesitation. My signature had already been stolen once. This time, it was mine. Meanwhile, Milo sent me an audio file. "I pulled this from a voicemail cache," he said. "It was saved automatically when she forgot to hang up on a call." I clicked play. Morgan's voice. "If he ever wakes up, I'll just say it was grief. Who could blame a widow for moving on?" My blood didn't boil. It didn't even stir. I felt nothing. And that nothing gave me clarity. She was already building the eulogy. All she needed was my silence. I wasn't silent anymore. I created an anonymous email account, no name, no ties to me, and began carefully releasing the truth. First, I sent encrypted documents to our bank's fraud investigation department. I flagged the forged quitclaim deed and attached comparison signatures. Then I reached out to Morgan's employer, HR department only. I attached screenshots of her joking about financial manipulations and included a timeline of her misconduct. No threats, no demands, just data. Then I sent one final message to an address Milo had tracked down. Subject line, "Your husband and mine." Inside, photos, hotel receipts, chat logs. Chase and Morgan tangled in lies. I didn't sign the email, didn't include a return address, just left a note at the end. "I thought you deserved to know." I watched each email leave the outbox like missiles from a submarine, silent, targeted, untraceable. By the end of the week, the bank had frozen her checking account. Her employer opened a quiet internal review. Ann Chase's wife, she posted a status on Facebook that read, "I thought betrayal was supposed to feel like fire. Turns out, it's just cold." Everything was unraveling, quietly, precisely, strategically, and I was just getting warmed up. The courthouse smelled like old paper and fresh anxiety. I sat beside Silver's in a narrow conference room, off-white walls, too cold air conditioning, and a table that looked like it had seen hundreds of confessions. This wasn't a criminal trial, not yet, but it was civil mediation, and I came prepared to make it unforgettable. Morgan entered 10 minutes late. She wore her usual armor, cream blouse, sharp heels, a necklace I'd bought her for our 3rd anniversary. Her expression was composed, borderline bored, but I saw the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth when she noticed me. Not rage, not shame, just calculation. Her lawyer, younger and visibly nervous, followed closely behind. She barely looked at him. She looked at me. "You look better than I expected," she said, with a smile too small to be real. I didn't respond. Silvers opened his folder and began laying out documents with quiet efficiency. Financial ledgers, signature comparisons, medical consent forms, a printed transcript of her messages to Chase, all marked, dated, sourced. Morgan's smirk twitched again. Her lawyer glanced at the materials and said, "We'll need time to—" Silvers cut him off. "You have until the end of this session. That's what the court granted." Across the table, Morgan leaned back and crossed her legs. "None of this proves intent," she said coolly, "and most of it falls under spousal privilege or joint access. Technically," she emphasized the word like a shield, "most of what I did is legal." That's when I opened my folder. I didn't slam it, didn't dramatize it. I just slid a flash drive across the table and said, "Press play." Her lawyer reached for it, hesitated, then inserted it into the laptop. Morgan's voice filled the room, casual, laughing. "Once the insurance clears, I'll start the transfer. He won't know the difference." Then another clip, her joking about fingerprints, about grief, about a clean exit. Silvers leaned forward and said, "Still want to go with, technically?" Her lawyer blanched. Morgan didn't look at the screen. She stared straight ahead like the audio wasn't real. But her hands started trembling. I noticed because I used to know those hands better than my own. "You're bluffing," she whispered. "I'm documenting," I said. We let it sit. Let her stew in the silence. Then Silvers added, "You can walk out now. Or we can take this to trial and make every detail part of public record. Medical neglect, financial misconduct, attempted fraud, emotional abuse. And if that's not enough, we have a journalist already sniffing around." He wasn't bluffing. Chase's wife, Lauren, had done more than just burn her marriage down. She'd sent screenshots to a local investigative blogger. The story went live that morning. "Wife drains comatose husband's accounts. This is me getting what I'm owed." It had already been picked up by 2 regional outlets. Reddit was eating it alive. A friend from Halston and Crane had forwarded me the headline with a single word. "You?" Morgan's eyes darted to her phone, lighting up silently on the table. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she swallowed hard and asked, "What do you want?" Silvers laid out the terms like he was reciting a grocery list. "You forfeit the house. You return 40% of the withdrawn funds within 60 days. You sign a formal apology, read aloud in court, and submit it to the media. In return, we settle civilly. No criminal charges for now." Her lawyer tried to negotiate. Silvers didn't budge. "You're lucky," he said, "because if it were me in his shoes, I'd let you burn." Morgan looked at me. Really looked this time. "I loved you once," she said, voice barely audible. I didn't flinch. "And I trusted you once. We're even." She signed. No tears, no dramatics. Just a faint nod when the pen left the paper. We walked out first. I didn't stay for her court apology 2 weeks later. Silvers sent me the footage, but I deleted it without pressing play. She wanted an audience. She could perform for someone else. I didn't need her regret. I didn't want her voice in my head again. The headlines were enough. Wife issues public apology after husband's financial wreckage exposed. COMA survivor reclaims life from betrayal. I never gave a statement, never corrected the facts or fed the narrative. I just watched from a distance while the truth settled in around her like cement. She'd planned for me to die quietly. Instead, she watched me rise publicly, with evidence, with silence, with everything she thought she buried. The mornings here are quiet in a way you don't realize you've missed until you hear it again. No sirens, no buzzing notifications, no glass walls or echoing hallways. Just wind through pine, the occasional ripple from a fish breaking the surface, and the rhythmic creak of the old wooden dock just outside my front door. It's been 6 months since the last court document was signed. 6 months since I left the city behind, with nothing but a duffel bag and my name. Finally, mine again. The cabin isn't much, a 1-bedroom with a wood stove, a cracked leather armchair, and shelves that smell faintly of cedar and old books. I rebuilt it piece by piece, not just physically, but mentally. Routine by routine. Mornings start with black coffee and a notebook. Afternoons, I hike or work with a local mechanic in town. Evenings, I cook. Real food, quiet food. Then I write. Not for anyone else, just for me. I keep a journal now. Nothing poetic, just facts, thoughts, fragments of what happened, what I learned. I read once that trauma doesn't vanish, it just moves into another room. Writing helps me keep the door open without letting it swallow the rest of the house. Today there was an email waiting when I opened my inbox. First one from her in months. No subject line, just a single sentence. You destroyed my life. No greeting, no explanation, just that. I stared at it for a while, fingers hovering over the keys. I thought about replying. Thought about all the things I could say. The evidence, the trial, the recordings, the money, the almost death. The fact that she had tried to disappear me while smiling for photos and sipping wine with someone else. But I didn't say anything. I highlighted the message, clicked delete. It felt clean. Later that afternoon, I walked down to the dock and sat with my journal. The breeze smelled like rain. Ducks skimmed across the lake in pairs, their feathers catching the light like coins flipping through air. I flipped to a clean page and wrote, "She thought I wouldn't wake up, but I didn't just wake up. I got up." I let the pen rest there for a while. Then I underlined it once. This place has no internet most days. No cell signal unless I hike half a mile toward the ridge. I don't mind. It means people can't reach me unless I want to be found. Morgan never saw the value in stillness. She always needed the next dinner, the next crowd, the next approval. And maybe that's why she never saw the strength in silence. I don't track her anymore. Don't care where she works, who she's with, or whether she ever issued that apology with her voice or just her signature. My peace doesn't depend on her regret. She took thousands. She took my home. She took trust and twisted it into leverage. But she didn't take everything. She didn't take this view, this breath, this stillness. She didn't take me. My neighbor Greg comes by sometimes, retired contractor with a voice like gravel and a heart 3 times the size of his truck. He brings fresh eggs and the occasional fishing tip. He doesn't ask about my past, just talks about weather and deer sightings and how he once tried to bake a pie and nearly lit his kitchen on fire. I think he knows. I think he also knows I'm not ready to say it out loud. And maybe I never will. Maybe that part of my life will stay written between these pages, because not everything broken needs an audience. Tonight, I lit a fire early, sat on the porch with a blanket and watched the sky shift from steel to amber. The lake reflected every color back to me, like it wanted to prove something, that even when things fall apart, they don't stay that way forever. I closed the journal and let it rest on the table beside me, took a deep breath, and another. The kind that reaches your spine and lets you know you're really here, still here. No more courts, no more plans to destroy or defend, just days, just choices, just me. The sun dipped behind the tree line, leaving streaks of gold across the water. I smiled without thinking, not from revenge, not from victory, just release. And as the light faded and the first stars blinked into view, I whispered the truth I'd been circling for months. She emptied my account while I was unconscious, but I reclaimed something better, my name, my strength, my peace.